Hi, my name's Danielle Hanson. I'm a poet in Atlanta, Georgia. I have a couple books, Ambushing Water and Fraying Edge of Sky. And I also edit for Doubleback Press, which is a press that brings back books that have gone out of print because the original press has gone out of business. And I also am a senior reader at the Atlanta Review, which is a journal associated with Georgia Tech. I'm going to give you a little poetry reading today and then give you a poetry assignment. Let's just jump right in. Eating his dead wife. It doesn't even seem weird anymore, eating his dead wife's ashes in his cereal every morning. He enjoys being with her every day, her inside him for a change. If the cereal is sweetened, he thinks of her eyes. Bran reminds him of her navel and how like a bowl it was. He doesn't know what will happen when he runs out of her again. Hiking in Slovenia. We started in a small town, at the foot of a small Alp. Fingers, gestures, words in no language, the word church in every language, and the beginning of the trail quickly turning into nothingness, a limbo heading straight up. It seemed more dangerous to go down than up. 3 walking sticks broken, spirit broken, determination and dirt to hold on to, and then the sound of small voices. Whether they were angels to help us or angels to drive us back into the earth, they failed. We made it to the top. The frescoes were primitive, and we headed down not talking, not knowing the name of the village we began in. The way down was as hard as the way up. We were sinking back into earth that would not accept us, and we were lost. So for this next poem, I used to live in Arizona while I was getting my master's degree at Arizona State. And this poem is about one of my friends graduating and moving on. And there's one term I need to just explain to you, and that's a cholla. Cholla is also known as a jumping cactus. It's this cactus that's made up of a whole bunch of balls. And they have the spikes on them, just like you expect. And then they have these long, almost invisible, very light-colored, very thin spikes that go much further than the spikes you can see. They have little barbs at the end. And if you walk past this cactus and it brushes your clothes or the fur of an animal, the whole ball that barb's attached to will come off and whip around and embed itself in you, which is how it travels from place to place and makes new babies in a very evil way. Saying goodbye to a friend. Not needing a fire, but starting one, because we already had the wood. The smoke becoming women, then a deep fog with men disappearing into the ground. The sound of low country music. Behind that, the sound of crickets. The driver tipsy and backing into cholla, a piece in your friend's leg, then rolling around, poltergeist in the truck bed. Out of the headlights, you shrink into the lit end of your cigarette. Hold up, my computer needs me to log back in. There we go. All right. So you've probably noticed none of my poems rhyme. They don't have a lot of rhythm. So what makes them poems? For me, I believe that a poem, working its best, crystallizes and distills a moment. It takes something, it puts focus on it, and whether that is a moment in time, or whether that's a feeling, or whether that's an image, it makes it shine and it makes it special because you're looking at it so closely. I believe the language should be crisp. I used to work in corporate America. I was an executive at AT&T, And the thing that I find most like creating a poem was creating a PowerPoint presentation. Because for those, every bullet point has to have the minimum number of words. Every word has to have meaning, and you had to have thought about how the logic in the story plays out before you can put together a good presentation that tells a story through a bunch of small phrases and pictures. So I think that that's good training for writing poetry too. I enjoy playing with the world and making my small images. When I was putting together my second book with the editor who had chosen to publish it, she mentioned that I had a lot of poems that had angel imagery in them, which is not something, I mean, even one of the ones I've already read had angels in it, but it's not something I had really noticed about my work before. And not something I would have thought that I had in there. I think of angels as kind of a sentimental image, and I don't think of myself as a sentimental person. But one thing I like about angels is that you can use them. I mean, if an angel were to show up in front of you right now, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? And you don't really know, because he might be telling you you're knocked up and that's a really bad thing because you might get stoned, or it might be a really good thing because you're going to be famous forever. Or he might be telling you to get out of your town because it's about to turn to dust and you can't turn around and look at it. Or he might be saying that you're going to become the next king, or something like that. You just don't know. So you have this image that seems to be laden with a lot of emotion and a lot of import, but it doesn't necessarily mean any one thing. So it's very good for playing with. So when my editor mentioned that I had a lot of angels, and I didn't want to have a lot of angels, the only solution seemed to be to add more angels. And so I already had the first poem I'm going to read to you, where I imagine angels as garden insects. And then I wrote the second poem that I'm going to read to you, where I imagine them as an infestation of mice. So a guide to ridding oneself of an infestation of angels. Hand-picking is best, a gentle squeeze between forefinger and thumb. So you get squishy angels. The second one I wrote after my editor had mentioned the angels, and I wanted to pump up the volume on that a little bit. Angels as mice. The infestation was in the crawl space and walls, chanting under floorboards, hosannas in the middle of the night. Angels scat in the yard at dawn. The website said to take action at the first sign, so we set traps and waited. If the infestation goes on long enough, you may start to notice a distinct, unpleasant smell, markings on the walls. Angels leave grease trails wherever they go, spreading diseases to smite the wicked, announcing unwanted pregnancies. If you find angels, don't try cohabitating. We patch holes in floors and stop prayers for intercession. Dispose of bodies double-bagged. Keep pets away. We make conditions inhospitable. Avoid being the only holy people in an unclean town, or prophets slacking their duties. We must stop being shepherds watching flocks at night. About half the language of that poem comes from an extermination website. So once you come up, that's one of my favorite ways to write, is to come up with a crazy idea, probably a silly and stupid idea, but then try to make it logical and try to make it real. And back to what I was saying about a poem freezing a moment in time. My dad asked me once, like, what was the difference in poetry, or what makes poetry and kind of contrasting it to stories and other kinds of creative writing. And I think it's the difference between looking at a still photograph, which may have a story in it. You might be able to tell a ton from looking at a single photograph. But it is a different thing than a film, even a short film, and certainly a different thing than a full-length movie. And I think a poem that's doing it right is like a picture that you look at and you can tell an entire world from it. So this next poem, the rest of the ones I'm going to read are from a manuscript I'm putting together now. I'm going to start with an aphorisms poem. I wrote a few of these where I just picked a single object usually, just a single object that you can picture. And then it's almost a theater exercise where I try to think of all the different uses for it and try to think of sayings that go along with it. So this is aphorisms for the ear. The ear is the snail of the head. An ear is a wax museum. No one wants to drink in an ear garden. He was up to his ear in ears. An ear is the seashell of the head, echoing the ocean. An ear is a cave that should not be explored. If you were all ears, no one would talk to you. The ears were ringing in the new year. The sound circled the drain of the ear. She smiled from ear to ear, a journey of many days. A lobe is a path to love. He gave a ring to her ear in promise. The sow's ears were made of silk purses. A herd of ears. I spell herd, H-E-A-R-D. Get it? The ear curled into a ball and slept. He followed the spiral of her ear and was lost. Similarly, I did a series of odes. I call them meditations, but an ode is a poem that's in praise of something, or the aphorisms were kind of sayings around a single noun, which calls attention to that noun and makes it like, I don't think in most of those the ear was acting like an ear. And similarly, in the odes, you can play around with different images and what that object looks like and what its function could be in really creative ways. Meditations on lichens. And this is for my friend Wendy Truin. Half moons, fingernails of a tree, parentheses, inside parentheses, inside parentheses. You are the hidden meaning, unspoken in the woods. What isn't heard when a tree falls. Alternating dark and light, like a cloud-filled sky, you always point north to the star you love. You are stair steps to a monument of fractals, the small inside the large, the stars of the forest. Brittle porcelain of nature, plates serving air to air. The erection of a tree lying down, half-buried shield from a forgotten culture. So I think next I'm going to go to, there's another series I wrote. I got myself in this situation where I signed up to write a poem every day in December, and which is a really busy month anyway. And so I had to give myself assignments that could go over several days. And so I did the aphorisms, I did the meditations, the odes, and I also did these ones where I pictured saints in the afterlife. And all the saints pictures that you see in churches, there are a few things you see. One is that they're often holding something that represents them, so that you know what saint they're talking about. Maybe if they're the patron saint of something, it has something to do with that, or something that reminds you of their name. They also often have the same injuries that they had when they died, so that you know who they were, and also that you know the suffering that they went through to become martyrs and saints. And that's the part of this that I find really interesting, because it's just absurd to think that these people died and then they're in heaven, but they still have all the wounds that they had when they were injured. And so I have a series of these saints kind of complaining once they reach heaven. This one is Saint Sebastian. If you ever see the pictures where there's usually a young kind of attractive guy, and he's casually leaning up against usually a tree, and he has arrows sticking out all over him. So that's Saint Sebastian. He was shot full of arrows. He recovered from that, no problem. and then he was hunted down and killed again. So he had 2 martyrdoms. So this is Saint Sebastian in the afterlife. Eternity for me is sand through a sieve. I was shot full of arrows for my first martyrdom. I was rescued, only to be clubbed to death for my second. A misshapen sieve is my fate. Prayers sift through me, scattered across heaven. Only the heavy ones get caught in the mesh of me. I am slowly sinking from their weight. And then the other one I'm going to share from that series is St. Lucia. St. Lucia is the, she was, they're called the, I believe the Virgin Saints. There's a whole series of these girls that were probably around 300 to 500 AD. And the only thing that they did is they reached the age where they would be married or at least engaged. So around 12 to 14 or something. And they refused to go through with that process because of their religious beliefs and were killed as a result. So St. Lucia is one of those. She wanted to save her dowry and give it to the poor so that she could help people out, and she frankly didn't want to get married anyway, it seems. And she was turned into the cops for being a Christian and was killed. Part of her story is that her suitor had told her how lovely her eyes are, and so she gave them to him. So St. Lucia in the afterlife. Hoping to give my dowry to the poor, I rejected my suitor. When he brought police to kill me, I gave him my eyes he admired so much. I try to continue my acts of charity here. I gave Dennis my head, peeled off skin for Barnabas. I tried to give everyone a hand. The items are returned, the recipients horrified. I won't give up my vows. I will hide my presence under beds, among cloaks. May the Lord bless us all and keep all our parts. Then I'm going to end with some travel poems. I reread Ed Hirsch, which book is, either has Earth or Heaven in the title. Anyway, it's this lovely book where he talks about Italy a lot. And I kind of got inspired and thought, what if I could write like Ed Hirsch? And I can't at all, but I have a few poems where I've tried, and now you're going to have to suffer through them. The first one is Venice, 1991-2016. Looking through time at the past is like looking across a still lagoon, hazed through heat and humidity. Truth is there, unclear. At 19, I stood near this Venetian water, back to San Giorgio Maggiore, face to St. Mark's Square. A pigeon is perched on my head, trying to gain footing but slipping and clawing, wings stretched out for balance. We had woken early to escape the heat. Light slipping down the building to our heads in empty streets. Delicious morning. We ripen standing still. Then I'm here again, adult and steady, overlooking the narrow Mercuria, behind the golden horses, through the back of the clock, through time and onto the square. My daughter Olivia is 12, and she stands still, face to St. Mark's Square, arms outstretched, pigeons balanced perfectly on her arms. She's a statue, the Lady of Pigeons. The light on her hair is clarity. We wander to the north end of the city, where the streets empty of tour groups and heat. Step into the church of Madonna dell'Orto, Tintoretto's, to see the master's work, to share what I know of beauty. We see the miracle of St. Agnes and idolatry of the golden calf. A girl stares out from the presentation of the Virgin at Temple, drawing us into the crowded scene. Olivia, love, is she you or is she me? And when you have twins, you got to write poems to both of them, right? So this next one is Abisko, Sweden, which is up above the Arctic Circle. It's where the Swedish version of kind of our Appalachian Trail starts, a trail that goes across in the entire country. So Abisko, Sweden, 2016. We take the train overnight, sleeping in stacks 3 high like firewood, our bodies ghosted by motion, refusing to believe the earth could be still. We hike into night, through woods stunted from huddling through months of night. It's summer, and the calendar ticking off days is as meaningless as a clock counting seconds. The water in the sky reflects onto the water on the ground. We can't find our grounding. We find the white ghost wing of a ptarmigan caught by fox in winter. Ptarmigan's a kind of bird. A wolverine will take a reindeer, and another for the love of the kill, like ice chewing through rock. We can hear the crunch of bone beneath our feet, beneath ground. We soak our feet in a pool, and fish chew our skin. Annika catches one, because sometimes destruction is like that. Sometimes it can be caught, a wolverine's skin in a yurt. I have a picture of you, Annika, standing on a mountain in the Arctic. You're the top of the world, sky around your shoulders like a pelt. All right, got one more. Gion Festival, Kyoto, 2018. Flooding delayed our trip by a week. Heat flooded our senses to insensibility. July was finally here, with its 1,000-year parade to keep the plagues from flooding in, with a float of the boy emperor who enters the forest to select wood for a temple, and a float holding the chigo, a boy chosen as a messenger to the gods, separated from his mother for the festival month. He is a live child on a wooden float, although others have wooden children. There is a float that tells of the ancestor of the emperors, Amaterasu Omikami, sun goddess who hid inside a rock when she was angry, who made the sky dark for days with her silence. This heat is also the sun's wrath, and people pull a float with a moon in defiance. When night finally comes, when Amaterasu Omikami sleeps, lanterns are lit to bring the moon to earth. We slip, my children and I, behind the festival, deeper into the park, deeper into night. A tanuki and her pups search the trash for scraps. The mother turns her head and stumbles off, heat-drunk in moonlight, leaving her babies behind. We get so close, we can almost touch them, these chigos. We can almost let them whisper the words of the gods. Okay, that's the end of my reading. I'm going to give you a writing assignment now. If you're watching this as part of a class and your teacher wants you to do the assignment, great. If not, maybe you'll enjoy it. So the first thing I want you to do is think of an event. And it's one that has just a single emotion attached to it. So don't think of something like a death in the family. Like that could be an extremely important thing, but death is normally something that we have mixed emotions about. For example, maybe we're angry and sad at the same time, or we're relieved that the person is no longer suffering while we're sorry for ourselves about missing the person. So don't do anything that complicated. Something that would work better is, maybe a time that you looked out the back window and you saw a deer in the yard, and that was a kind of a magical feeling for you. Or maybe a time that you hit your thumb with a hammer or something. Maybe you had just a single emotion on that. Or I had a student once who wrote about her brother stealing eating the last bananas. That was a very angry poem. So once you have your event and it's a single emotion, then I want you to write 5 descriptive sentences about what was going on in the room at the same time, or if you weren't in a room, going on around you. For example, what color were the walls? What sounds could you hear? Was there any kind of smell? Just something that's very concrete, very descriptive, very straightforward. But you're going to choose details that give the same emotion as the event. For example, if it's an angry poem, maybe it's a jolt of lightning. Maybe it's something being hazy, or who knows? If it's a moment of wonder, maybe it's some soft lighting. Maybe it's a happy song on the radio, something like that. In none of these details do I want you to mention the event at all. Once you have those 5 descriptions, I want you to give them to someone else to read. I want them to be able to read those 5 sentences and guess what family of emotions you're in. They might not get angry, but maybe they'll get a very negative feeling. Yeah, they should definitely be able to tell whether it's a positive feeling, whether it's a negative feeling, kind of something in the same range of what you were going for. And once you have those 5 sentences, they're clean, they don't tell what the event is, and they get the right emotion across. After that, you're ready to move on. So if you need to pause right now, go ahead and do this. You are at 26 minutes and 50 seconds in. So you can start back at that point. Okay, now you have your sentences. Now I want you to write one single descriptive sentence that says what the event was. I want it to be clean. I don't want it to go on and on with lots of commas and stuff. If you saw a deer in the backyard, you can say, I saw a deer in the backyard. Just straight up. Take that sentence, try putting it in the middle of the poem, and then do a version where you put it at the end of the poem and decide which of those you like better. So are your details coming towards the event? You get to the event and then you're backing away from it? Or are all your details leading up to kind of a big reveal at the end? According to your sentences and the event, either one might be better. So see which one you like best, and there's your poem. You're done. All right, hope you enjoyed it. Have a good one. If you want to check out anything else, DanielleJHanson.com. I'm going to put some information in the notes of this so that if you want to get in touch with me, and I would love this, if you want to send me the poem that you write on this assignment, that would be absolutely awesome. I would love that. Have a good one. Bye.